What's up guys, Boost Auto here. Today we're going to be showing you how to install our Ion Series illuminated door handles on 2019 to 2023 Chevy and GMC trucks. Introducing our new Ion Series light up door handles by Boost Auto. Our door handles are direct OEM replacements, but we've turned the styling up to 11, with all the same lighting functions as our other Boost Auto products jam-packed into a factory-style door handle. Plus, the Ion Series handles can be built to have white or amber running light to fit right with any build. That paired with our startup sequence will turn your ride into a showstopper the second you turn the key. And of course, all Ion Series handles will come with turn signal as standard flashing signal or our premium sequential signal to ensure you stand out on the road. Don't let the night hold you back. Ion Series innovative technology ensures your vehicle stands out brighter and stronger than the rest. Plus, with a solid polymer construction and your choice of either universal black, chrome, or OEM paint match, you can rest assured our Ion Series illuminated door handles will be tough and look good doing it. Wherever you stand with your build, take it to the next level with Ion Series illuminated door handles. A couple things to note before we get into the install. This procedure is for 2019 to 2022 Chevy and GMC 1500 non-refresh trucks, as well as 2020 to 2023 Chevy and GMC 2500 and 3500 trucks. If your vehicle is a different year range, head on over to boostauto.com for the latest in fitment and availability and to purchase all we have to offer. Let's get into it. With our seats all the way forward and the windows rolled up, we can now move on to disconnecting the negative battery terminal on our primary battery. If you have a secondary battery, disconnect that as well. Starting with this trim panel just behind the door grab, we're going to use a trim tool and start up front here and just pry our way back to the rear. Now for this trim cover just behind the door panel, we can use a pick or a small screwdriver and just pry behind a corner, and then we can remove that. Now you can remove the 7mm bolt under the handle. The second two are going to be just under the door grab here. Now we're just going to have two more at the bottom of the panel here. Now the only thing holding the panel on is going to be trim clips. So if we just grab an edge of the panel and firmly pull back, we can start disengaging all those clips leading up to the top of the panel. Once we get to the top of the panel here, we can pull up on it and out and make sure to clear that lock rod there. Now we're going to disconnect our interior handle cable. So there's going to be a tab right here on the cable that you're going to want to push down on, and then you can push the cable outward. Then you're going to have a little ball on the end that you can disengage from the handle. Now we're going to have this one large electrical connector here. So to unlatch this, we're going to first pull back on that red tab. Now we can unlatch our gray latch here. You're going to want to make sure that it goes all the way down, and then we can pull out the other side of our connector here. Now there's going to be one retaining clip on the harness, so we're just going to pry back on that. Now with our panel removed, we're going to remove our inner door liner as well as our speaker here. So we're going to start with the door liner. We're just going to slowly peel it back around the edges, being careful not to rip the liner. Once we get it fully peeled back, we can just take our cable and guide it through the hole on the liner, and then we can set this aside. Now for our speaker, we're going to have one 7mm bolt at the top here. Pull back on the speaker, it should disengage. On the back side of the speaker, we're going to have an electrical connector here, so we're going to pull up on that red tab first and then depress the tab underneath it, and the connector should unplug. Then we're going to have a little retaining clip here, so we're just going to pry underneath that.
Now if you have passive entry on your door handles or the button to unlock your doors on the handles, you'll have this white connector here. So we'll want to unplug that before we remove the handle. Start by just prying this down, and we'll just pop this out of its place. That way we can access the connector a little bit more. Then you want to locate this red locking tab here, and we're going to push that back with a flat blade screwdriver or a pick. And then up here at the top, we have this little tab we'll press down, and that'll release this connector. So now we're going to focus on removing our original OE door handle here First, this little plug on the side, we just need to pop that off. So you can just go in with a trim tool of your finger, pop that off. It'll release this access bolt in there. Now, to remove this handle, first, you're going to go ahead and pull out on that handle.
Then there's a little T25 Torx bolt in here that we're going to loosen till the handle releases. We'll show you here. Just a quick note, make sure you're only using hand tools when removing and installing your door handles.
You'll see the handle and feel it release. And now that this is fully released, we're just gonna kind of swing it out. You'll wanna make sure that this end clears here. We have a harness, so that comes out with it. Set that off to the side. And then this right here, this will just pry straight out. You wiggle it a little bit and it'll come right out, just like so. If this rubber gasket comes off with your OE handles, just simply insert and reinstall. We'll be using that for our Boost Ion series handles as well.
We can now move to the rear door.
So we're gonna remove this trim panel right here, just in front of the door grab. So we're gonna start on this end and just use a trim tool to start prying out from that end. We'll work our way over to this end as there is a latch there. Now we're gonna go ahead and remove this little trim piece just behind the handle. So if you just get a corner with a pick or a little screwdriver, we can pry that up and remove it. So now there's a couple 7mm bolts we got to remove. The first one is going to be just behind that trim panel. The other two are going to be behind that first trim panel we removed. Then there's one last 7mm bolt just at the bottom of the panel here. Now with all the hardware removed, the panel is only held on by trim clips. So there's a little lip you can get on the inside edge here and just start prying back on the panel. And you're just going to want to work your way around up to the top. Once we get all those disengaged up to the top, we can pull up on the panel, make sure we clear that lock rod. Now we're going to disconnect our interior handle cable. So on this electrical connector, there's going to be a little white tab we need to pull down. We're going to want to push in and then the connector can come unplugged. Now we're going to be left with this little retainer on the harness holding it to the panel. So we're just going to pry that off the panel there.
Now go ahead and peel away the inner door liner, slip it over the door handle cable and set it aside.
Now for the speaker here, there's just one 7mm bolt here. With that bolt removed, we can peel our speaker back. So for that connector, we're just going to pull up on the red tab there, and then we can press down underneath. Again, we're going to have a retaining clip here, so we'll just get a little trim tool, peel that off.
Now, go ahead and repeat the same steps as the front door. Remember to only use hand tools when removing the door handles.
Now we've got a handle here in your kit, so we're looking at the driver front handle, and how I can tell that is the cap is always going to face towards the rear, and the opening with the key lock cylinder is going to be the driver front. And then for this handle, this little plastic piece here is always going to face the front of the vehicle, and this BA, this logo right here, is always going to be right side up. Just a quick note, when installing the new handle, loosen the bolt until the metal tabs are aligned with the opening in the door. These metal tabs need to sit far enough over to allow the handle to latch into place. So now with your driver front handle, you got your two connectors, making sure they're routed through the guide here. We're going to feed those into the door, just like so. Make sure it feeds all the way in so you don't pinch anything. And then this little piece here, this is actually just going to line up and it'll guide right in. That'll angle over. And you'll see this start to line up. We can just leave that there for a second. And then this rear piece here, we'll just make sure that the lock cylinder's lined up and it just press fits directly into the door. So once everything's lined up, press the rear end in first, and then you can press the front. You'll feel it clip in. So now it's in there solid. Now to get this handle to fully latch back into place, you're going to lightly put pressure from this side. You don't want to put a whole lot of pressure, don't force it, but you want to lightly put pressure as we go ahead and tighten this bolt. So now we have this pressed in, it'll kind of click into place, and then it'll just start tightening this screw here, and it'll slowly pull this handle back in, and that should be good. Now if your truck has passive entry, you'll have a white connector that you fed through the door. If you don't have that, ignore this step, but we're going to plug that back into the connector that we originally unplugged it from. So that'll plug right in. Don't forget to close that lock. We'll just clip that back into place right here. Now that we have the handle mounted, you just pop this rubber rivet right back in.
Now you can go ahead with installing the rest of your handles, repeating the same steps as the front.
So in your kit, you're going to have a couple different harnesses and your Ion series door handle module. So we're going to start by installing the module, but want to explain the harnesses a little bit, as you have an input and an output side of the module. So the long 4-pin connector leads, this is your output side of the module, and then these connectors are your input side of the module. It's super important because we're going to start doing the input side of the module, then we'll tie the module into place, and then we run the output. So it's important to know that when we do the input side, you're cutting them to length. So for the harnesses themselves, there's 2 input harnesses. One's a 2-pin with a red and a black wire. The other one's a 4-pin connector with 2 red wires, one with a green tracer, one with a blue tracer, and then an orange wire. That's your input harnesses. We'll be working with those first, and then you'll have 4 output harnesses for all 4 door handles on your vehicle. That'll have one single black connector with a blue wire, a black wire, and a red and yellow wire. Just as an added note, if you did not opt for the running light functionality on your Ion series door handles, you won't need the orange wire, and you can just cut it and tape it out of the way. Now in the driver kick panel, we have our Ion series module for the handles, and we have our 2 input wires that we just talked about. We're going to start by plugging those in. So there's a 2-pin and a 4-pin connector. They're sized appropriately, you can't mess it up. We'll plug those right in and make sure they're pressed all the way forward. So we've got this hooked up. Now we have to find the location we're going to mount this ECU so we can cut these to the proper length.
To connect the Ion series module, we're going to be tapping to the BCM, which consists of this row of connectors located underneath the driver's side dash.
Now we'll locate the body control module, or BCM, which is going to be these connectors right here, and start by unplugging the black and the brown BCM connectors. So unplug the black, we'll pull those down and out of the way. Now on the black connector, we'll locate pin 13. Pin 13 is going to be the 3rd row down, 2nd slot from the right hand side, as you can see here. Take a red T-tap from your Boost Auto kit and add it to that wire. Take the orange wire from your kit, you want to measure it, and then we are going to cut that to length. Now let's cut the length, we'll just strip the end of that wire.
Now crimp on a spade terminal from your kit and install it onto the T-tap.
Next, we'll locate the wire in pin 3 on this black connector. So the wire in pin 3 is going to be this one right here. Be on the top row in the 2nd slot from the right hand side. Take a red T-tap from your kit and we'll install it on that wire.
Then take the red and green wire, measure it, cut it to length, and strip it back. Now crimp on a spade terminal from your kit and install it onto the T-tap.
Now on the brown connector, we're going to locate pin 2 on the top row of the connector. It's going to be on the 2nd slot from the left hand side. Take pin 2 and we'll put one of our red T-taps on it. And we will measure the red and blue wire to length and then cut it. Strip the end off that wire.
Now crimp on a spade terminal from your kit and install it onto the T-tap.
And then lastly on this connector, we're going to locate pin 4. Pin 4 is on the top right corner, right here. Take a red T-tap in your kit, install it on the wire in pin 4. Then we'll take the red wire, measure it to length, and then we'll cut it. Then strip the end of that wire. Then take your inline fuse included in your kit with the butt connector end, and we will insert that onto the red wire. Then take the other end of the fuse, strip that end of the wire.
Now crimp on a spade terminal from your kit. Then heat shrink the butt connector and install the spade terminal onto the T-tap we just installed.
Now we can plug your 2 connectors back into the BCM. Then for the black wire in your kit, we're going to locate this ground stud here and measure it to length and then cut it. and then strip the end of that wire. Then take the ring terminal in your kit, slide it on, and we'll crimp that down. Then we'll remove that nut. Then take the ring terminal you just installed on the black wire, slide it on, and reinstall the nut. Alright guys, now we're going to move on to the next step of our process, which is wiring up the door handles from our Ion series wiring. So next we're going to be working with the longer 4-pin adapter harness with the open wire ends here, not the input side but the output side. So we'll start by plugging this into the module, and then we'll start by running it to the driver door. Now we're going to release this door jamb boot. So next there's a little clip behind this boot on the top. You just press down with a flat-bladed screwdriver. That whole unit will clip out, and then there's a connector underneath will disconnect.
Then, to remove the door jamb boot connector, pull out the red locking tab, then pull the white connector tab down and pull out on the connector.
We'll pull this boot all the way into the door now that it's disconnected. So start by just pressing this into the door from that side, and we'll feed this whole door jamb boot and connector back into the door itself. So now we got our module here. We've already hooked up the input sides. We're going to identify the output called left front. So that's going to be this side here. That's because we're working with the driver door first. So take your long harness we just looked at. We'll plug that in here. Make sure that clicks. Now we'll take a straighten out piece of metal. We need to route it through the door into the cab so we can tape our wires in here. So we're going to go through the speaker hole, then through where the door jamb boot was until it comes out inside here. You can reach your hand up and feel around for it if you're struggling a little bit. Once it's inside here, we'll go ahead and tape the harness to it. We'll pull it back through into the door. Now, as you guys can see, we have the harness routed through the door, but it's not through the door jamb boot yet. So we need to start by actually routing through the cab side of the door jamb boot, the connector we unplugged from the door jamb. So we'll start with this side, run it through the door jamb boot, and out through the other side here. So you just feed this on in. You want to make sure not to chafe any of the wires along the way, but just feed it through the door jamb boot, keeping it fairly straight throughout that process. It should feed right through. You see it comes out there. So we'll pull some slack. Now we don't want to pull all the slack through because we do still have to route this harness in the cab. So we're going to pull some of the slack, but not all the slack through. Now that we have our harness routed through, we're going to take the cab connector of the door jamb and we're going to feed that back up through the door jamb opening. Now keep in mind you have this other harness in here, so we're just kind of going to feed that back during the same process as we feed this connector through, just like that. And you have the door jamb boot back in the door jamb. When reinstalling the connector, make sure the wiring harness is run below it to ensure it's out of the way. Now reinstall the cab side of the door jamb boot. So the bottom side has a tab that latches in, and then the top just press fits back in just like we removed it. So we'll slide the bottom in and then the top. Now going back to remember where you have this mounted. So you'll want to mock up the correct harness length, and if you have any extra slack, you'll just pull it into the door here since we'll be cutting this to length. And just the door side of the boot will pop back in as well. So just make sure that's correctly seated, and there's this weather tight seal around the door jamb boot. All right, now once you have your harness in the door, your door jamb boot tied back up, we need to route this along the OEM harness. So you're gonna feel up by your door jamb boot and just kind of feel the harness as it runs back. So I'm running my hand along it here, but I can feel it runs just kind of down this door frame. You'll see it like right in here. It'll run back on up here. We're going to tie this harness up along that factory harness, and then we'll regroup. Once you reach the window track with the harness, it is really important that you route the harness behind and around the track to avoid it getting snagged as the window goes up and down. So in your kit, you'll get these plastic retainers as well. So they'll have a 3M adhesive foam on the bottom side. You'll peel that off and stick that to the door. First, you need to clean off the door though to make sure there's no dust and debris. Then once you have that clip there, you'll route the wires through and then you just press it closed and it latches into place. That's how we're going to retain the wire now that we have it routed on the OEM harness. We need to go a little bit farther than the factory harness does, so we're going to use these clips for that. Now that we got the harness routed, we just need to hook up our pigtail. So we're going to start by cutting this to length, the harness we previously ran through the door. Just cut that to length there. Then we'll take our pigtail here. So you can see we have a black wire, a blue wire, and a red and yellow. Those will match the corresponding wires you ran through the door already. So this is the pigtail that'll come in your kit. We're going to strip the ends of each wire, match the colors, crimp them down, and then heat shrink those butt connectors.
We can now connect the door handle harness. We recommend adding a dab of dielectric grease to the handle connectors before you plug them in.
Finally, tie up the remaining slack in the harness.
To start routing the rear harness, we're going to start by removing the rear sill plate and peeling back the weather stripping on the front and back of the B pillar.
Now we're going to be removing our upper and lower B pillar trim pieces. Now for the upper trim panel, there's a couple of covers here that are hiding some bolts. So for this top cover here, we're going to want to pry back on this left side here that is closest to the rear of the vehicle. Lastly, we're going to remove this trim cover here around the seat belt.
Now remove the 3 bolts holding in the B pillar.
Once our hardware is removed, we can just pull back on the panel.
Now we can remove the lower B pillar trim panel. The panel is just held in by trim clips, so once those are all undone, you can pop out the seatbelt trim cover and lift the whole panel up over the seatbelt. Then give yourself a little slack on the belt and set it aside.
Now we're going to release this door jamb boot. So next, there's a little clip behind this boot on the top. Just press down with a flat blade screwdriver. That whole unit will clip out, and then there's a connector underneath will disconnect. Now to remove the connector, you're going to slide this white tab back and then press the latch on top, pull the connector out. Now on the door side of this door jamb boot, we're actually going to push this one out into the door jamb. That way it's easier to route. So you can take this loop and just pull on it, make it go this way, pop it out of place. Now this plastic routing guide on the back of your door jamb boot, that can just pop off. There's a tab here and a tab here. That'll just pry up and it kind of releases this.
If the cap is secured with tape, cut it back to gain access.
Now back up at our Ion series module, we're looking for the left-hand rear output. We have another harness from our kit here. So that's this output right here. We're going to plug that in. And again, throughout this process, keep in mind where you're mounting this module. That way you make sure you leave enough slack up under the dash. Now we got to run this harness back to the B pillar here where we're going to pass into the door. We're just going to route it along the floor of the cab here, just along the driver's side. Now that we got our harness back here and our straightened out metal piece, we're going to tape that to it so we can route into the rear door. So now that we've got our wires taped, we're going to route it up the B pillar and out the connector opening here. So making sure we route it on the front side of the tensioner, we're going to go ahead and route that up, and then we'll route it out the connector opening. Next, with the wire still taped to your straightened out metal piece, we're going to route it through the rear boot, again coming out the opening we created with this rear wire guide. So we'll just kind of feed that through, making sure not to chafe any wires. And now the wires are through the boot. We'll feed it in through the door, out the speaker hole down here. Now we're going to take our connector, plug the connector back in and push the lock forward, and then we'll clip our door jamb boot back into place. Now, replace the wire cover on the inside of the door jamb boot, then the door side of the boot itself. So now we'll route the harness through the rear door. We have the harness routed here. So as you're routing it on the OEM harness here, the factory harness, you want to make sure you route it behind this silver piece and you're tying it up all the way along that factory harness to avoid any other components in the door.
Now, just like the front, go ahead and route the harness around the window track, then wipe down the inside of the door and place your adhesive clips.
Now that we've got this routed around the window track, up by the connector, we're gonna cut this here, then strip the ends of it, and put our adapter on it, crimping it and heat shrinking it down. Then we'll take this connector you just added and plug it into the door handle. Finally, tie up the remaining slack in the harness. All right, now that we have our driver's side doors all set up, handles installed, wires routed, everything like that, we're gonna turn our focus to the passenger side. The procedure for the doors on the passenger side is exactly the same, but first we need to get the harnesses over there. So back at our Ion Series module here, we have the remaining 2 connectors, which are for the passenger side, and you have 2 remaining harnesses in your kit. You want to make sure that you can tell the difference between the 2 harnesses once they're on the passenger side. So on one of the 2 harnesses, we're just going to put a little bit of tape on the end, that way we know the difference, and then on the other harness, we're going to leave it blank. This will help us, once we're on the passenger side, know which one's front, which one's rear. So you want to pay attention to which plug you plug the taped end of the harness into, because if we plug this into passenger front, we want to make sure we run that to the front door. Then take the connector end of the 2 harnesses and plug them into your module. Then we're going to take our straightened out metal piece with our wires taped to it, route it on over to the passenger side. So just find an opening and route that through. All right, now that we have the wires on the passenger side, we'll untape them from the harness and repeat the process we did on the driver's side on the passenger side of the vehicle, removing the same trim pieces and following the same steps.
Now for reassembly, we're going to start by resituating our B-pillar trim here. So we're going to start with the lower trim panel. Now for the upper trim panel, we're going to take that part of the seat belt and feed it back through along with the trim piece there. And then we can line this up and clip that into place, and we can refasten our hardware. First we can refasten this 7mm at the top. Then we can get the 2 10mm on the grab handle here. Now we can start resecuring some of our covers. This top one here has a latch that faces the front of the vehicle, so we're going to latch that end in first and clip in the other side. Now for the covers on the grab handle. And we can resecure this center cover here for the seat belt. Lastly, we got this little cover at the bottom here. You just pop that back into place. We can fasten our weather stripping back around the B-pillar. Now we can pop our rear sill plate back into place. Now we can move on to reinstalling our door panel. Before that though, we're going to want to resecure our door liner. Now we can move on to reinstalling our speaker. So first, grab the electrical connector, clip that back into place and re-engage that red tab. Then the little clip here, you can push that back into that hole. Now we'll latch the bottom of the speaker in and clip the top back. And we can refasten our 7mm bolt there. Now with our door panel, we can first plug our electrical connector back in. Make sure to re-engage the white tab on the connector. Now we can take our fastener on the harness here and push that back into the hole on the panel. Now for the handle cable, first we're going to need to engage the ball on the handle. Then we're going to pull the cable out, guide it through the slit there, and then we can re-engage this tab there. Now with the panel held up, we can take our lock rod here, and then we're going to fish that back into the hole on the panel. With the lock rod in place, we're gonna engage this top part of the panel with the weather seal. Then once that clips in, we can start re-engaging the trim clips around the edge of the panel. Then we can move on to securing our fasteners. Starting at the top here, we'll refasten the 7mm just behind the handle. Then we can pop the trim cover back in. Now we can refasten the two 7mm just below the door grab here. Now we can pop our trim panel back on, so we're gonna latch this end in first and then work our way to the front. Then there's one last 7mm bolt just at the bottom of the panel here.
Moving on to the front door, we can start by reinstalling the speaker.
Now we can move on to reinstalling our door panel. Before that though, we're gonna wanna re-secure our door liner. Now we can plug our electrical connector back in. So we're gonna feed that. You just push it forward until it engages that latch. Make sure the latch is all the way down, and then we can push our tab back up. With our connector plugged in, we're gonna feed our little retaining clip back into the hole there. Now for the handle cable, we're first gonna feed the ball into the hole on the latch there. And we're gonna pull the cable through that slit, and then we can re-engage the connector here. We're gonna take our lock rod and feed it back into the hole on the panel. Now we're first gonna latch the top side of the panel into place with the weather seal. Once the panels latch into place at the top, we can go around the edges and start re-engaging all our trim clips. Now we're gonna reinstall all of our 7mm screws, starting with this one just behind the latch. So we can re-secure our trim cover. Now refasten the two 7mm just under the door grab. Now we can put our trim panel back on. Don't forget the two bolts at the bottom of the panel. At the front of the vehicle here, we can re-secure the weather stripping around the B-pillar.
Then replace the sill plate and kick panel and the seat track cover. Lastly, we can reconnect our negative battery terminal.
All right, guys, now that we have all of our install done, our Ion series door handles are now lighting up better than ever. Check it out, boostauto.com. That's where you can find a set for your truck. Catch you in the next one.
The products shown in this video and so much more can be purchased on our website at boostauto.com. We're proud to offer a wide variety of products, parts, and accessories for your truck or SUV that will take your build to the next level. To watch videos like this one and to find out about our newest innovative products for your vehicle, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's all for now. We'll catch you on the next one.